Welcome everyone here in this auditorium in het Huis Utrecht. Also welcome to our online audience watching this event on portal.impact.nl, our online festival environment. Welcome to the event with Mounir Samuel. Mounir Samuel is an author of 11 books, and you can buy some of his books here in the display of Savannah Bay in the lobby of het Huis Utrecht. He's also a journalist and a theater maker, performance artist and cultural entrepreneur who works on the crossroads of politics, media, art and culture. The keynote he will share with us is called The Restoration of Adam and Eve. After the keynote, we'll have a Q&A session with Mounir here in the auditorium, and you can ask your questions, but you can also ask your questions via email at questions.impact.nl, and I will try to include them in the Q&A that I will have with Mounir after his presentation. But now, please, a warm applause for Mounir Samuel.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Very happy to have some live audience here and also welcome you at home or anyone who watches this back later, and please share it. It's going to be good. All right, so my name is Mounir Samuel, and I have the great privilege to talk about a topic that I love most, which is love. I'm a hopeless romantic in a way that my friends define me as somewhere in the middle of a 1001 Night Oriental story and some sort of Victorian poetry, painting, Pride and Prejudice, think of anything quite romantic and then some extra. Well, that's me. And when I was asked by IMPAKT to talk about love in a digital age, I thought, for me personally, a lot is wrong with love today. For one, I'm currently not in a relationship. That's bad. Second, if I look at love in our society, I find it quite loveless. And I find us, millennials, zennials, a love-scared generation. Also, if I think of love as a more of a social aspect in society, not necessarily romantically, but as being loving towards each other as an act of humanity, I think we have lost love a lot. Let's just think about Afghanistan, or Moria, or the refugees drowning as we speak in the Mediterranean Sea, or the many homeless people in the streets that are simply passed by and not even looked at, or, well, I can continue and continue and continue. So, I thought of the problem of love in a digital age, and I thought, what is the key core issue at stake here? And I think I found it. It's trust. We simply don't trust. We don't trust ourselves and our feelings. We don't trust the other. We don't trust the other that has to stay far away behind borders and walls and seas and oceans. We don't trust. And that didn't start today or a couple of years ago. I think it started all the way back to the beginning. And that's why I want to take you to Genesis 1, the creation story in the Bible. Because if we think of our current contemporary concepts of gender or sex or relationships, it all started with deeply rooted constructs about what it means to be a man versus what it means to be a woman, what it means to have a monogamous relationship, what a relationship should look like, what marriage is, what sex is, when sex is allowed, when it's haram or forbidden, and all those things in between. And not only lays this creation story, or for some of you maybe creation myth, to the core of our European identity and our Western concept of relationships, love, and gender, it also is the basis of how people in West Asia or the Middle East, North Africa, look at love, gender, and sex. And it is both the core identity of those countries that are predominantly Muslim as well as Christian, or influenced by Judaic traditions. Almost the entire world, so to say. So, without further ado, let me take you to the Garden of Eden, that lovely paradise. But before we go there, I want to see some hands. Who already know the story about Adam and Eve? Hands up. Okay, you're quite good in your biblical knowledge. I'm happy. All right. Who thinks Eve got a very bad rap in this story? Hands up. Well, that's kind of the same group. All right, now, I have good news. We're going to restore Eve's reputation. Yes, we are. In the beginning, God created the world. And God took 6 days in doing so. Now, we shouldn't think of a day as being 24 hours, because although God created light and darkness the first day, the sun was only created on the third day, which means there was not a cycle of 24 hours. So any Christian or any person saying that the days are 24 hours are wrong. Also, the Bible says a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day to God. So there were 6 days, but how long these days were, we don't know. What we do know is that God, as the crown on their, I'm not going to say he, God is not a he, their creation created Adam. And this is a beautiful painting of Michelangelo about the creation of Adam. But the painting is wrong. Because Adam wasn't the first man. He was the first human. Human made out of red clay, sand, and water, who then received the breath of God, the Holy Divine Spirit that gave life to the lifeless. Adam, so says Genesis 1, was created masculine and feminine, not man and woman. Some other versions of the Bible say male and female. Still, it doesn't say man or woman. So Adam was the first human, and the first human was both male and female in one, and lived in a perfect trinity with the Creator, the creation, and itself as a full, whole being. This already has huge implications for how we look at the position of man. No, man, you were not the first created. Humans were the first created. It changes the whole world order. But we're not aware of that. And we're not aware of how we have translated the Bible in a way, and the Quran, for that matter, in a way that we have made Adam and man. Even so, Adam now is the most used name for young boys in the Netherlands. I think we should start calling girls Adam. Adam was in the garden enjoying the beautiful bounty of nature, still untouched by the poison of man. And he named all the animals. He honored the animals by giving them names. He would only eat, or I shouldn't say he, they would only eat the fruits from the trees. So no laboring for food. It was all there. And Adam walked with God in the garden. They were in a perfect relationship. But Adam was alone. And so God after saying, it's good, it's good, it's good, I created the light, it's good, I created the plants and the trees, it's good, I created the fish and the birds, it's good, I created human beings, Adam, it was great. He says, it's not good for man to be alone, or actually for human to be alone. And so Adam is put asleep, and there was Eve, created. And here we see a painting from Rubens, in which Adam meets Eve for the first time. And Adam is truly delighted, starts to speak in poetry even. There she is, our wrong Bible translations say, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And Adam and Eve formed a perfect union, an instant love affair. Now, there are many things about this Bible story that I can not address in the short time that I'm given, but I do want to address this. We, in our societies and cultures, actually it's quite a universal concept that the man should chase the woman. The man should somehow convince the woman to sleep with him, to be with him, to marry him, and all that else, right? We are now slowly changing that ideas, but it actually brings men in huge confusion, and women as well. Because who's now in the lead, who should ask who on a date, who should pay, and all those other things. But if you look at the Bible, the only love stories recorded in the Bible, the man never chases the woman. The woman is presented to the man. So Adam was sleeping. He or they woke up, and Eve was presented by God to Adam. Later in the Bible, Rebekah was brought to Isaac while Isaac was meditating and praying on the mountain. Later in the Bible, Boaz was sleeping, and Ruth came and lay down at his feet. Not once do you read in the Bible that a man chases a woman. The only one who tried to do so was Samson, and well, he was a he-man with a she-weakness. So maybe we should stop with the whole chase and the whole game. And when I thought about this, I watched a documentary on birds and how birds lure women into being with them, even though it's for a wink of a second, to foster offspring. The birds, they whistle, they create a nest, they clean out an area to make it perfect for lovemaking. They learn themselves whole dances which they practice for hours and hours, and sometimes they even perform a dance for 24 hours or more to convince a female bird. But not once do they go look for the female bird, nor do they chase her when she decides, after 24 hours of dancing, singing, whistling, and all that, to fly after her when she flies off. Until the last second, the female bird has the choice not to mate with the male bird, and he will never rape her. Well, I think we have to learn a lot about that behavior. So, back to Adam and Eve. Again, this painting is wrong, because we see a man and a woman, although, well, if you look from heteronormative cisgender standards. But actually, Adam and Eve were still just two humans who had a perfect love affair, two humans who were in a perfect union. Now, I know that many women today have fought for so many generations for their independence that they actually find it quite hard to commit, because it feels like they're giving up on their freedom by being in a union with a man, because then they will be what? Having to submit to a man, having to please him, and all those other roles that we have attached to being a woman. But if you look at the role that Adam and Eve got, it was in perfect partnership, in perfect equilibrium, so to say. They both got the exact same order: be fruitful and multiply. And that was much more than have sex and get children. I think they had a lot of that too in the garden. I would, but they had to be fruitful in the sense that they got the creative power of God to then be creative themselves, and to create more out of what was already created in every single way. And Eve is called a helper, but a helper is not an assistant. Even more so, Adam actually followed Eve, which we will soon find out. Here everything is still happy and fruitful and joyous, and look how much wildlife we still had. But then there was the snake, the most wicked and smart of all animals, so the Bible says. And the snake starts to play with Adam and Eve. Most people think Eve was alone when the snake seduced her in eating the apple. Now, first, the Bible never talks about an apple, and I think it wasn't an apple because that would not be sexy enough to lead to the fall of man. So probably it was a very interesting exotic fruit that we don't even know. But anyway, there was a tree, the only tree God said, don't touch that tree. You can eat from any other tree, but don't touch that one. And yet, of course, humanity was tricked to the forbidden fruit. But they were both there. And that's something most pastors or reverends or priests won't teach you, or imams for that matter. It says this: Eve ate from the fruit and gave some to Adam, who was with her. He was there all along. She wasn't like, Adam, you come eat. No, he was standing there being stupid and all like, whatever you want, as long as I can make out with you, I don't care. So anyway, what did the snake do? He started playing with Eve's mind. Adam wasn't thinking about anything. He was just with his big dick energy. You know? So Eve was seduced in questioning herself. Because what happened? The first thing the snake asked, and snake is evil, the devil incarnated, or anything like that. Maybe it's our own worst enemy. Didn't God say you can't eat from any of the trees? So he's trying to create confusion and doubt. And Eve is like, no, wait, no. We can eat from every tree but this single one. All right. Then, because then we would die. That's what Eve says. And then the snake says, no, you won't die. If you would eat from this tree, you would know, you will be like God. The interesting thing is, Eve was already like God, because God created Adam, male and female, in their image. Adam and Eve were already like God. But the snake somehow convinces Eve she isn't, and she won't be until she eats from that fruit. And this is where the identity crisis of humanity started, by this small voice, which make Eve forget who she was, how powerful she was, how much she was already a representation of God. Until this very day, our confusion in our identity and our self-worth and our self-esteem and our value, our universal value that we have, that we are enough, that we are loved, that we have a right to exist simply because we have breath in our lungs that is given, and a gift. We don't know that. And we don't see it in someone else too. We constantly have to fight and strive for our mere existence while we are already like God. So Eve eats from the apple. Adam is like, whatever you do, babe, I'm good. So Adam eats too. Here's another very, very odd portrait of that. And then, suddenly, everything changes. Eve and Adam find out that they are naked, and they are ashamed, and hide themselves behind bushes, for each other, for themselves. And this is where, according to my view, Adam and Eve stopped being two humans and started being men and women. Because this was the second they realized they're not the same. They are physically different. They are somehow aware of what divides them instead of what unites them. And not only are they afraid and ashamed towards each other, but also to God. So they hide in bushes and try to put on fig trees, which are quite edgy, by the way. You get a rash immediately. So not the most convenient plant to use. And God comes to the garden and says, hey, 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 people were like, Adam, where are you? And Adam says, I hide myself because I'm naked. And God asks, who told you you're naked? And that's where the great divide started. The divide between humans, changing them into two genders. And the start of the battle of the sexes that never ended. The divide between humanity and God, or the spirit, or love with a capital L, or whatever you want to call it. And the division between humanity and Earth, the beautiful planet that they once lived in like equals, like a joy, like a gift that they honored instead of kill, destroy, eat. The finger pointing starts there, and it never ended. God asked Adam, what did you do? And Adam says, that woman that you gave me, she's the one to blame. He takes no responsibility at all. Well, what's new? Just look at the Dutch government. So, he points at Eve. Eve at least has the courage to admit that she indeed ate from the fruit, and says, the snake seduced me. So, although she took more responsibility, she also put some on what God created there. And here is the root of our distrust. Because Adam thinks, that woman, that gift of God, tricked me. She's dangerous. And my feelings, my sexuality is dangerous. Because it leads me off stray. I did something that I should never have done. Because I wasn't thinking straight. And he blames her, but moreover, he blames himself. And Eve thinks, you didn't protect me. You were there all along. And not once did you warn me, even though you were in the garden way longer than I was. I only came recently. And you were supposed to be my guide, my mentor, so to say. And you didn't protect me once. And then on top of that, you blame me and you blame me for what happened to you and to us. And she blames herself. Because somehow she would be the one guilty, right? Because she ate first, right? And this is a generational curse that we carry till this very day. If you are truly, truly honest to yourself and sit down with yourself in a journal or so, can you truly, truly say you are not ashamed of anything? Not what happened in your past, not some things that you did that you maybe regret, or you're guilt-tripped by someone else. People cannot guilt-trip you if you're not somehow prone to the feeling that you are indeed guilty. Things that may happen to your mom maybe, or to your caretaker, or to your lost lover, or at least for me, I know this. I have huge struggle being a man, especially because I wasn't raised like one. Being a trans man means that I have to do the whole socialization process myself, without any clear role models, because I haven't found the man that I want to look like yet. That's why I read my Bible so much. Hope to look like Jesus one day. So, when I think of my masculinity, I am fighting that same masculinity because it was so hard living like a woman for so long. Because of all those men, and now I'm one of them. I actually always was, without the privilege of being so. And that's a very confusing thing. And then I think of all the mistakes I made because my sex drive and my sexuality is so strong that I would step out of any moral comfort zone or any values that I actually have for a second to then regret it and feel ashamed. Adam and Eve are cast out of the garden. From then on, they will have to labor for their food. And Eve will have immense pain by giving birth. Also, there will be hostility between the snake, between nature, between the planet, and humanity. And I can give you a whole lecture how actually climate change started there and then. from the second humankind start to labor for their food, we started to produce CO2. But I will not get into that right now. But so there was the start, the root, not only of the division between Adam and Eve, because from that second on, Adam started to control Eve. Adam, who was now the man, no longer the full, complete, masculine and feminine human, controlled Eve, possessed her almost, suppressed her, and not only her, he tried to suppress the earth. And he managed ever more in doing so. The more advanced he got, the more technological knowledge he had. He also started to suppress the other, the black man, the animal that he now slaughtered and eats instead of living vegan. And I can continue. It became a battle for control, for submission, oppression, and divide after divide after divide. And the trinity became a duality between male and female, black and white, planet, earth, and humanity, animals and humanity, and then religious divides, Christian versus Muslim, straight versus gay, cisgender versus transgender, and I can go on and go on and go on. And with the outcast of Adam and Eve from this perfect, harmonious paradise, death came into the world. Starting with their own child, they got 2 sons first, they got more, and Cain killed his own brother, Abel. That's how far the division got. The 2 brothers would kill one another. And this is something we see everywhere we go. If we don't kill someone else by weapons of mass destruction, we will kill them by our words, by our politics of exclusion, by our institutional racism, by our homophobia that I would call homo-hate, and so much more. And while humanity developed, we also degenerated into small, tiny boxes, bubbles, within bubbles, that then became algorithms, and then we had COVID-19, and we got even more bubbled into digital bubbles, till we didn't even know who we were aside of the likes we got. Identityless, so we cling to that one identity. We made LGBTQ into a religion. Thanks God if you're gay, because at least you have an identity. What if you're a white man who is cisgender and straight? It's a disaster. You have no identity to wave with. Did you ever see the straight flag? It's ugly. It's black, white, no joke. No parade for you, although every day is a parade for straight people. So we cling to these identities to give us some sort of raison d'être. But it's only resulting in more divisions, more polarization, more trench wars of groups that don't know how to be a group or a community that stand, how to meet each other and find the bridge, the connection beyond the identities that divide us. And the battle of the sexes became such a deep notion in our society that we truly started to believe that men are from Mars and women from Venus. Well, men and women are from humans who lived in Eden, the same soil, the same water, the same breath of God. And we started to look for love in all the wrong places. At least I did. I'm fighting my whole life to be loved, to be heard, to be seen, to be accepted, to be understood, to be forgiven for who I am. I think it's time for us to undress ourselves. Sexual way would be nice, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about uncovering all those layers, all those masks, all those coping mechanisms So we finally meet again. To truly meet up with the other in a physical space, even though the person doesn't look like you at all, doesn't think like you at all, doesn't vote like you at all, and then meet the human, the soul, the heart, behind the masks, the layers of external identity, like race, like ethnicity, like sexual orientation, and all those other things. To uncover the shame and our insecurities, because we masked our insecurities. We mask it with ego and pride. They say that we are the most narcissistic generation ever lived. And I think it's right. We literally walk around with a camera in front of our face, making selfies instead of taking pictures from the other. But then all the narcissism only means that we are very insecure and clueless. Because narcissism and egoism and pride are only coping mechanisms for insecurity and fear. And we are also the most fearing generation ever recorded by science. So if we are the most scared and fearful generation, then it's not strange that we look for all sorts of safety mechanisms and protection and blow ourselves up just to feel a little bit more secure. I don't need to blow myself up when I already feel at ease with myself. I don't need to grow my hypermasculinity if I am secure of my masculinity. I can walk like this and feel as manly as ever. I don't mind. And I don't care if you call me gay. But how many men would do that? We are entangled in a maze. And the digital age is like a mirror, but then more of a microscopic glass mirror who actually increases and reshapes the already existing issues in our society. So for example, on your first date, most people will try out the water. But on a dating app, you might be catfished, you might be talking to a psychopath, to a total lunatic, to a sex addict, to a rapist, to anyone else. So you're not looking for love in a happy way and feeling the vibe. No, you're asking all these questions to see who am I actually talking to. And if you had 1 or 2 or 3 or more bad experiences, chances are quite high that you'll become more of a detective, trying to dismantle the other, trying to prove to yourself the narrative, he's probably not trustworthy anyway, she's probably crazy anyway, they are probably narcissistic anyway. And it just grows the fear to then actually be quite surprised if the person turns out to be quite normal. You might actually even enjoy the date somehow. Wow. And personally for me, dating apps don't work. I don't get likes with a name like Mounir. It's bad. If I make it Miguel, it works. But Mounir, no. And then I'm not like anything people think they see on basis of the picture. I'm not Moroccan, or Dutch for that matter. I'm not Moroccan Dutch. I'm not cisgendered. I'm not Muslim. And I can go on and on. So I first have to dismantle all the identities that people think I have to then see if they would still accept the identities that I do have. At that point, you lost your date. Really, trust me. So not only does this dating app contribute to more racism and discrimination, because yes, if you are Iris and blonde, you are lucky on those apps. It also increases the feeling of insecurity, and and demasculinates me or gives trans women a very bad rep. It sexualizes and fetishes people, especially black women, for example. And I can go on like that. But these are only explorations of a social trend. The dating apps make things worse. Digital age increases the existing problems, or they magnify them. But they are not rooted in the digital electronics. They are rooted all the way in the beginning. And how we completely misinterpret, sorry for my bad English, what it means to be human, what it means to have a gender, what it means to be whole, what it means to be loved, what it means to give love, what it means to live in harmony. It's time for real trust, a complete surrender to love without fear, to not distrust your own feelings, nor distrust the other. I'm not saying marry the person on the first date. You might want to ask some questions first, try out the water a little bit, but we do need to understand that love only works when it is completely trusted, when you completely surrender, even though you might break your heart in the end. Knowing that every time you break your heart, you only grow a little more, heal a little more, because we are only touched as much as our trauma goes. And it's actually like the Bible says, like iron sharpens iron, so one human sharpens the other. I decided to quit fighting for love. I also decided to quit the chase. That doesn't come natural to me. As I said, I'm a real romantic. I go all out. And it's very hard for me to let go. Actually, it's almost the most impossible assignment to me. So I keep fighting and working and trying to convince, only to realize that not only being desperate is quite unsexy, but that it doesn't fit my identity as being a complete, whole human who lives and breathes in this loving light, who is both masculine and feminine, and doesn't need either a man or a woman or another person on my side to complete me. There's no such thing as another half. Two halves don't make a whole, they make hell. But that I, out of that love, want to connect, want to create this union, this bond, a divine one. I want two hearts to beat on one heartbeat, two souls to move in the realm of the spirit of all souls. But I won't run for it. I'll just walk, I'll stride, I will be the best version of me, at ease, knowing that we're all one. And then if the one comes along, I'll be ready. Thank you very much.
Just a moment, we'll get some chairs on the floor so we can have a relaxed and seated conversation with Mounir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mounir, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
As I said in the beginning, whoever has a question, you're very much welcome to share it with us. There's this green microphone ball thingy, cube, that will be thrown at you. And you can also email questions to questions@impact.nl. I have this tablet. Let me first activate it.
Type really fast, people.
Yeah, it works. So I'll start with some questions, but whenever you feel like sharing a question, just shout, raise your hand, whatever. You're a religious person?
No.
Not?
I'm a relational person. I don't do religion, I do relationship with God. It's different.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder how this relationship with God developed over the years?
By getting rid of religion in a constitutional and institutional way. So, I think most people know godsdienst en geen God. They know religion, but not relationship with God. That's why Gandhi said, I like you, Christ. I like your Christ. I don't like you, Christians. I wish you Christians were more like your Christ. Because he understood that most Christians don't live out Christ, right? They knew religion. They knew the rules. They make the Bible into a legal framework, or the Quran, or any other holy book for that matter. And for me, ever since I was little, I had questions, and I kept asking questions, and I kept looking, and I felt God's presence in my life, but I didn't necessarily feel it so much in church. Sometimes I did. I mean, there are wonderful Christians, wonderful churches, but usually I would find God in very odd and different places. And I started to develop this idea that God is much bigger and more joyful than the way God was expressed in church. At least my church, which was the Bible Belt Amersfoort, hervormde bond op gereformeerde grondslag. So, Dutch Reformed. in a different time and age
more
as well.
Conservative branches of
Yes,
Christianity
yeah.
in the Netherlands.
Absolute, definitely so. And I started to read all sorts of theology. I also started to investigate Islam, and I even studied Islamic law aside of my studies. My Muslim friends sometimes call me Mufti Mounir, or the Christian Imam. But in the end, I would always come back to Jesus, and I did really develop a very strong bond with Jesus as this ultimate mystery of God's love, impersonated. So for me, that's why I call myself Christian, because I truly believe in Jesus as being the Son of God, but then again in a different theological way than most Christians do. But for me, relationship with God is really like a relationship. So you fight, you make love, you fight and make war and have love, and it's like all of that. So it's never flat. Like a growing relationship is not flat. You have your ups and downs. I mean, hopefully you don't have a divorce, but you would have fights, and then if you conquer that, your love grows deeper and you grow your intimacy and vulnerability. And this for me is what faith is all about having this connection with a bigger, stronger, more loving presence than your own, but being open for new revelations every day. Because if I already knew God perfectly, I would be God. And I don't. Mm-hmm. I keep growing. That's it, yeah.
So religion is very much for you a personal, not institutional.
Yeah, but then again, relationship in this Trinity thing is more than only having a one-on-one with God. Mm-hmm. God in itself is I always want to dance when I talk about God. It's this being that is in a total movement, like the universe still expands, right? So the universe expands, and if the more I investigate the current climate disaster, I don't call it climate crisis, and Earth, I am super impressed by how everything works with everything. I didn't know that the real producer of oxygen was the ocean. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how whales are literally the salvation for humanity. Joan and the Whale is not a strange story now when I look at it from a scientific perspective. And so if everything with everything is united, so a human doesn't fully discover God if it's not united to its creation, which is also you and you. So in this relationship with the other, we also learn more about the creative relationship of God. So it would be very strange for me to be a monk on a mountain and say, now I know God, because I cannot know the heart of God if I can't find God in the heart of people. Mm-hmm. So it's a very relational aspect, and Christianity in itself is a very relational religion in that sense, and I do like that. And when you do sing together or pray together, the Bible says where two are united in my name, there I am, and I am total witness and proof of that. Every time I pray with someone else, and that person just agrees, even though the person is maybe not religious, but it's willing to agree on the words I say, something happens and people feel it. Mm-hmm. my friends always say, be careful what he prays for, because it always comes true. You know, it's this very strong, energetic power in that sense, but in union.
Mm-hmm. You asked the audience some questions. I also would like to ask the audience a question, so maybe we can have some light also in the auditorium.
There was light, yeah.
So we just specified what religion can mean. It could be your interpretation. Giving that like nuance to religion, who would identify his or herself as religious?
Or spiritual, that's fine by me too.
But religious, I think I didn't see any raised hands. And I mean, my question is...
we live in a very secular country. I'm working very hard to change that.
Yeah. This is your moment.
Oh, I have many. Don't worry.
You opened by saying that we live in a loveless, love-scared age.
Yes.
That's how I...
And generation, yeah.
To an auditorium without any person who identifies as religious, what advice, how can we bring more love in this society, or would it be possible without having your notion of relationship to God? Is it possible without going there, but with our own spiritual journey or atheistic approach to others in the world that we live on?
Now, I can give the politically correct answer, and I can give my personal bold answer.
The second one, please.
I'll do both. Oh. So, I'm thinking a lot about self-love recently because it's such a mantra in our society, right? So, you don't know how many girlfriends told me, sorry Mounir, I love you, but I need to love myself first, I need to work on myself first, I'm not ready for a relationship. And this is the common mantra, and I find that almost everybody echoes that idea, especially for women. They have to be completely independent, traveled the whole world, lived on their own, had a love affair with a woman or two, did this, did that, and then maybe they're ready to commit in a relationship. And there's a lot of pressure on a woman not to commit in a relationship too quickly or get married too quickly out of the fear she would fall back into that old traditional role model. And I see a lot of women struggling with that too, like being actually really in love but not allowing themselves into a relationship because then they would settle down or and it would put them back in time somehow. And that's why I really think we should change that idea of relationships. At least I'm not looking for a woman who stands behind the cooking pans in the kitchen. My God, I'll get bored. No, I'll cook myself. No, don't worry. You go. Fly around. But come back to me.
Commitment.
But the self-love thing, I think we are not able to love ourselves. It's impossible. You can go on a yoga retreat. You can listen to thousands of hours of podcasts. I did all of it. You can go to a monastery and have a silence retreat. You can talk to your girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever else forever. See every expensive psychiatrist in this country and go to your guru and read all your moon horoscopes. We won't heal ourselves because love gives, love moves, love changes, love creates. We can only heal ourselves, this is a very painful reality, in the mirror of the other. So, for example, I've been single for a very long time and I worked very hard on all my issues and traumas and blah, blah, but I always knew the second I get a lover in my life, I will know if I'm healed or not. Because the second I fell in love and I was smitten, as they say, and she was too, I discovered the pit hole of trauma and pain and bad patterns and internalized behavior that was never touched while I was still all by myself in my safe cocoon with my friends and my safe surroundings. That's what real love does. It's like a microscope of the soul. So the self-love only happens when you open up to love. And if you move around in this world, even though it's a constant step out of your comfort zone. And if you move the other to discover what you actually share with the other, and love gives, it doesn't take. So it's a very selfish thing to constantly only feed yourself, and then where do you feed from? Like, how do you give yourself the love that you never received? You have to let it in first, and I do believe, and now I come to my personal conviction, that we can heal a whole lot and experience whole love much better if we really open up to the idea to merge and create unions, even though it's scary and even though we feel not ready. Because the real vulnerability in love also lays in the true acceptance of you with all your brokenness, with all your imperfections. That actually in itself is healing. To feel so loved and accepted, that's the healing we're looking for. Because we all want to feel accepted for who we truly are, despite our flaws, despite our weaknesses. But a human will never achieve that full love to the other. So there, I do think God steps in by being able somehow to tap into that bigger, universal, unconditional love. The healing not only goes much faster, but you also have more love to give because you tap in a love that's not your own. So it's literally like the Bible says, make me smaller, God, so you become bigger. And then out of that bigger love, I have more to give. But this is something that most people that call themselves religious don't fully practice. So I will agree with you if you said, well, I don't find that religious people much more loving. No, it's usually true, not all the time, but it's usually true, because very little really tap into God as the source of love. They tap into God, the source of judgment, and so they judge. They tap into the idea of God as an angry, bad dad, and then they become angry parents. But if you truly discover the unconditional love for who you are, then you have so much relentless love to give and so much acceptance. Because if I truly, truly understand that I'm forgiven, that I'm loved, how much grace God has for me, how then can I exclude that grace to the other? And that's why I do talk to my biggest enemy, and I do shake their hands, and I do hug them. Only a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to a neo-Nazi who was part of a Nazi gang, and he was crying because I didn't accept his ideas. Now, I will never accept his political ideas. Let's make that very clear. But I said, I don't need to accept or endorse your ideas or political convictions in order to still love you for who you are beyond that identity and beyond those convictions.
Mounir, maybe because...
yeah, sorry, I'm lecturing.
We're running out
preaching.
of time. I also would like to give the audience the opportunity
I preach.
to ask questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll just switch Mounir on again.
yeah, it's very easy.
There's a question over there.
Thank you. And thank you, Mounir, for your
A bit
presentation.
closer, maybe. Yeah,
Like this.
that's better.
Okay.
I hear you.
Yeah, cool. So I'm just wondering why you chose Adam and Eve as representation for love.
Well, I don't say, I don't know if they had a good relationship or not, but I do know this. The social and cultural constructs that are developed and derived from this story work through in our society till this very day. So if you look at the reasons given why men, for example, should be in politics and women shouldn't for so long, or why men were allowed to vote and women weren't, or why men were in charge and women couldn't be, it was in the end always brought back to this story. The woman seduces, the woman is dangerous to herself and to the man, so man should be in charge. Look what happens if a man isn't in charge, like Adam wasn't for a second, that's why. And the same counts for most Middle Eastern, North African societies and every society thereof, because in the end, our oldest civilizations were all in Iraq, Syria, Egypt. And in Islam, Eve is the only woman that's actually named. So all the other women in the Quran have no name but Eve, and she's called Hawa, which also means breath and wind. So it's very interesting. And also within Islamic countries, you find the same ideas all dating back to this story. So I thought if I think about love and about the battle between the sexes and all of that, I have to go back to this narrative, this story that is so deeply rooted in our DNA as a society till this very day, even though we might forget, even actually you all knew the story, so look how common it is.
Raise your hand if you
Did
have
that
a
answer your
question.
question?
Thank you. Partially.
Okay, well, I'm happy to discuss it with you later.
There's a question back there. Raise your hand again, so we know where the microphone goes. Yeah, thanks.
Finally, I just wanted the microphone, actually.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. I was raised super Catholic, went to like uniform school, like all girls, and I am queer lesbian. So I was wondering, like talking about the Adam and Eve story and about shame, how like if this difficulty to love and be open towards the other person, like what is your sorry, I should have written it down, it would have helped.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, like what about like sexual shame? Do you think like the sexual shame or like body shame stands in the way of love, or how can
Well, I think I get your question. Look, one of the reasons why I chose the story of Adam and Eve, so maybe that also answers your question a little more, is because when I really think and believe that if we adjust our view of Adam and Eve being man and woman into being human, both masculine and feminine, that breaks open not only the way for all genders to be truly accepted and being part of the creation or humanity or whatever, evolution, so to say, but also it opens the way for same-sex relationships or any other type of relationship, because then it's a meeting of two people, right? And how much female or male they are, or how much feminine or masculine they are, or none of them, or either, doesn't matter so much anymore, because in the end you're all going back to that human that is whole in whatever form or shape. Now, talking about sex, if Adam and Eve are not a man and a woman, but are two humans that meet, then all sorts of sexual encounters are permitted instantly. You could wonder if it should be polyamorous or monogamous, if it should be in a covenant or without one, and that will be very different for every single person. But it will no longer be a privilege to straight people only, of two opposing sexes meeting each other. That completely falls away if you really readjust the cultural notions of all of this. And then for shame, it's very funny, I think, that the first thing Adam and Eve did, the second that their eyes were opened, so to say, is hide themselves for each other, while they were probably making love just a couple of hours before that, with the same bodies that they had. So I think that the second our identity gets broken, because that's what happened, the first sin of humanity was not eating from a fruit. It was listening to a voice that was not God's and doubting their own identity. The fruit only came later. So when we doubt our identity, then we get ashamed and we get very insecure and we get prone to body shaming, prone to all those other things. And one thing I know for sure, every person that I ever met that was scared of me or rejected my masculinity was very much insecure about his own masculinity or her own femininity. Those people that tried to beat me up for being transgender and called me names and did so many things because how could I be a man, were very insecure men, very ashamed men, very identity-less men. If you know who you are not bothered by my existence. And so that all plays along with this story. So I don't know if I fully answered your question with that.
Well, kind of, but I still have more questions.
I have a solution for that, and that is the bar. And because time's up, I've been told. Before we say
Not so
goodbye
fast.
to Mounir, there are so many more questions. There's another solution for that, and that's the books that you've written. And a few of them we have on sale here in the bar by Savannah Bay, a bookstore from Utrecht. Has a lot of good books, and they are also here for sale.
But there is also
Yeah?
another Q&A on your own live stream
Oh yeah,
at 9 o'clock.
with you.
Yes?
For our online audience, so you could log on and go to IMPAKT TV and listen to more of Mounir. That also means that you're not in the bar the entire time. You
I will
away
be in the
for
bar, I will go up, I will be there for the online audience, then I'll go back to the live audience here. What about that?
There you are. Okay, so before we say goodbye to Mounir, I would like to point out the next program that we have tonight, and that is Black Girl Magic, Janelle Monáe's Queer Afrofuturism, a highly recommended program. I hope to see you all there. And now, please, a warm applause for Mounir Samuel.
Thank you so much. Het is veel te kort.
Thank you.